All right, we will look at one of my favorite stories, To Be or Not to Be, and this is by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. And we have the story from Project Gutenberg here because it is in the public domain. And you can find the study guide link in the video description below. So for our active study guide, we'll start with a little bit about Kurt Vonnegut because that would be important. He was born 1922, died in 2007. He's most famous for his satire, gallows humor, science fiction, I might say dystopian as well. And his notable work was Slaughterhouse-Five. That would have been a novel. These would be his short stories. And something incredibly notable about Kurt Vonnegut that I do believe influenced his writing is going to be the fact that he survived the Allied bombing of Dresden, Germany in World War II. He was a prisoner of war, so he had been locked in a meat locker underground by the Nazis and then was bombed by the U.S. and British forces. His mother died by suicide the night before Mother's Day. He was returning home on leave, which is obviously very traumatic. Worked as a technical writer at General Electric, which influences views on automation and labor, hence our science fiction. Wrote Slaughterhouse-Five after 20 years of struggling to describe what he witnessed in Dresden. A lot of people say that that was his autobiography. Was a pacifist, atheist, humanist, socialist. So basically, atheist would mean he didn't believe in religion. Pacifist, he didn't believe in war. Humanist, he believed in human good for all, human good and dignity. And socialism would be somewhat the opposite of capitalism. He was definitely a critiquer of capitalism. And this story would have been first published in 1962. So you can say this is a Cold War story. And you'll notice a color scheme there for identifying literary elements because there are a lot of literary elements in this story. And you can also find a brief breakdown of our plot if you have read our story already. If not, you can read it at the Project Gutenberg link. So we'll begin with our plot exposition. We're introduced in the world with rules, and the setting establishes a futuristic utopia. But we might wonder here, it's saying at the very first, everything was well. No prisons, no slums, no asylums, no cripples, no poverty, no wars. All diseases were conquered. So was old age. Death, barring accidents, was an adventure for volunteers. The population of the United States was stabilized at 40 million souls. So this leads us to believe that science has advanced a lot, because this means that the only reason people die is they volunteer or they had an accident, like they fell out of a window or something. And we also learn we're in the future there. Well, this is later because throughout the story we'll find out it is the year 2200, which not too much far off. And we have this Dr. Hitt saying he's 240 years ago, and he talks about the world 200 years ago when America's population was capped at 40 million. So we learn that population was certainly a problem in the story. And we'll have to figure out how they dealt with it, because critical thinking readers might wonder, there's always going to be crime. There are always going to be poverty. Well, I guess you could eliminate poverty, but it just seems very suspicious, you could say, to have eliminated all of these things. And as we go into our setting, we learn we're at a hospital, the lying-in hospital, and then we meet our protagonist, a man named Edward, waiting for his wife to give birth. We might ask ourselves why people weren't being born as much anymore if it seems like everything was so good. That might be something we ask. And also, he is only 56, but I would say only 56 because the average age is 129 years old. This is all part of the setting, because you could say in the context of the setting, people live till they're 129. And we know he is our central character, and his conflict is going to be, he is having these triplets, but by law, if he cannot find these volunteers, he can't bring all three babies home. So this would be infanticide. They're killing the babies if the parents can't find someone to volunteer. Like they said at the beginning, death barring accidents was something for volunteers. So clearly, he is incredibly upset by all of this, and we will have to see how he figures out his conflict, character versus society. Because then we also have this painter who seems a little out of place, but that's how we also meet the characters, because the painter is painting the mural of the people who work at the hospital and who work for the government. So the drop cloth is supposed to symbolize the fact that this is not a perfect society. Something is going on. Well, we do know they're killing babies, which we then would have to ask ourselves, which people in this world are the ones that are able to get these volunteers? So you have the characterization, connects the setting and the character to show how the system drains people of individuality. And we have this sardonic old man, about 200, sat on the ladder, painting a mural he did not like. Back in the day when people aged visibly, his age would have been guessed at 35 or so. So we learn more about how this progressed in the society, people not aging and people living forever. The mural, and also this color purple. The color purple is supposed to represent royalty. So the fact that the Federal Bureau of Termination people are dressed in purple, we could say that they have more power in the society than others. And also with Leora, her wearing all purple. And we can compare these Federal Bureau of Termination. Normally it would be the Federal Bureau of Investigation, like the FBI. But in this one, it's termination, because those would be the people that are responsible for helping them basically commit suicide, like an assisted suicide. And the motif, this being named over and over, they mention it quite a bit. You could say the gas chambers are symbolic of how messed up the society is. You could also say the gas chambers were a motif because they come up over and over, a deliberate allusion to the Holocaust, which would have been pretty fresh in people's minds back in 1962. And then we have this song. It normalizes suicide, basically. If you don't like my kisses, here's what I'll do. Why should I take up all this space? I'll get off this planet. Let some sweet baby have my place. This is a very normalized thing, this assisted suicide, when people decide they've lived long enough. More symbolism with the painting and the gardener pruning the weeds and the circle of life. But then we ask, who's really participating in this circle? As the plot rises here, a rising action, that's when we learn the rules of this world. The conflict deepens as we understand the impossible position Welling is in. Leora Duncan and Dr. Hitz represent the government, indifferent, enthusiastic about a system that controls life and death. What makes you think you're not in it, said the painter. He gave a sardonic smile. It's called the Happy Garden of Life. The painter in general despises a mural. He's pretty miserable. He's fed up with his world he's living in. He's witnessing sickness. Well, actually, he's not witnessing sickness. He's just witnessing the cycle of life. When people are going in to have a baby, then you would know that someone else had to die for that person. I guess you could say that could get depressing. But more about his drop cloth. The perfect garden is false, government-controlled image. Real is messy, complicated, and stained. And then we learn about the significance of the title, To Be or Not to Be. This would be like if you were on an old-fashioned phone. You would have to text the buttons. They would have letters underneath. So 2 has A, B, C, 3, D, E, F, and then you had to press the buttons to get to the operator, whatever number you're calling. They used to text like that too. But these would be the illusion, title, the significance of the title. It goes to a Hamlet, to be or not to be. Hamlet is a mediation on whether life is worth living. Vonnegut turns it into a phone number. The government has literally reduced one of literature's greatest existential questions to a dial appointment line. And we have lots of figurative language for the ways they describe the suicide chambers. And Leora Duncan's symbolism, continue with her symbolism in purple, masking her job. She makes people comfortable while she kills them. And more about the setting as we go through the story, because this wouldn't be your typical setting, right? So births become transactional. Life has literal equivalencies assigned by the state. Then, when we have this theme of sacrifice, right, you could also say, if someone was famous in a society, this even goes for our lives today. Celebrities, when a celebrity makes like a GoFundMe, they end up getting money, whereas regular people actually might need it more. That's something that we see happening. So if we think Dr. Hitz would probably easily be able to get people to sacrifice their lives so he could have a child, we might start to get this opinion, well, considering the way corruption works, you could also say there's probably ways that wealthy people can pay poorer people to sacrifice themselves for their own family. Here's $1 million. Your family can live in luxury, and then you just retire yourself. So we could probably assume these types of things are happening. And we have Dr. Hitz saying it absolutely has to be this way because there was so many people before. And that kind of, we might ask ourselves, is that technically true? I mean, at this time, back in the 60s, they did worry about this idea of overpopulation, but would it really happen, or was it just something they were saying to avoid population growth in other countries? We don't know, but the phrase ethical suicide studios is the official name no one uses. The word ethical attached to suicide is an oxymoron. Gas chambers are associated with Holocaust, which is one of history's most unethical horrors. We could also start to assume the reason there are no cripples, well, you can't really say cripples wouldn't be the word, but like disabled people, when they say no cripples at the beginning, that could be because those are the undesirable people that are ended in the society. Then we have our climax. So the climactic moment here is when Welling makes his impossible choice, takes out a weapon, a revolver, and shoots himself. Well, shoots Welling, shoots Dr. Hitz, then Leora, then himself. Which we would probably start to wonder how often this happens. And then I guess questions that are left unanswered is is the hospital or the government going to let Mrs. Welling keep the children after such a violent situation took place? Because then wouldn't anyone that wanted their child to live choose this route? And you could also say the final moment. This was literally 2 murders. So our narrator at the start of the story, when they told us there was no crime, that is incorrect. Because clearly a crime was committed in this story, in this setting. So you have your themes. Is Welling's act heroic or tragic? Was it selfish or humanistic? Or selfish or giving, I guess, sacrificial? Because in this case, his kids can live, right? But he did kill a doctor who was helping to birth many children. I mean, and it wasn't Dr. Hitz. Well, Dr. Hitz does kind of take credit for the system, but in general, it wasn't his system that he put in place. It was the government. So that could be a theme and a central idea. How far would people go for their children? You could say, if you want all of humanity to be successful and thriving, do some people have to make sacrifices when it comes to some things? And in this society, it was having children. If you want to live forever, you had to find someone to die if you want to have a child. But in the falling action, nobody came running. Nobody seemingly heard the shots, which I find to be weird if it's such a crime-free place. The painter pondered the moral puzzle, demanding to be born, and once born, demanding to be fruitful, to multiply and live as long as possible, and to do that on a very small planet that would have to last forever. So then, in our resolution, he makes a decision to never paint again and call the municipal gas chambers so he can end his life. And they give him a very regular, I guess you could say, your city thanks you, your country thanks you, your planet thanks you, the deepest thanks of all is from future generations. It's not too personal, one could say. They probably always say it. So those would be the plot and a plethora of literary elements for you guys to use or talk about if you're building a literary analysis essay. These would be some symbols. You have the job class, the color purple, the pruning and reading, and the mural itself, the gas chamber, the song, the use of the ethical suicide studio, some allusions, that of to the Holocaust, Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. Oh, that's another one where I can put the link to that as well, where it's basically a satirical thing about what they should do with the Irish poor, the poor and Irish, that they should just end them, which it's obviously not supposed to be the case, or it's supposed to be satirical, because that is somewhat what was happening. But these would be other themes you could use to talk about in an essay, that you could build a theme upon a central idea statement. And here would be your notes for different things that were used in this building of this resource here. And that would be to be or not to be analysis for Kurt Vonnegut Jr.'s short story. And if you'd like to see more analysis videos or different stories or authors, just leave a comment below.